I want to welcome those who are already here at our lecture. Last week we had very interesting Cheryl Miller, who's had, I would say, decades of experience in the world of design and who teaches at Art Center. She, I think, it was very lively, her discussion. And today we are going to have Jimena Gamio. So we're looking at a different generation. We're looking at different cultural backgrounds, in what we're presenting here. So the HMCT is really excited to have Jimena. Jimena was kind of my student, I think a while ago. I claim her. We have worked with Jimena. She's a Los Angeles-based graphic designer and originally from Lima, Peru, and graduated with a BFA in graphic design from Art Center, of course. And you're currently teaching typography, aren't you? Are you teaching graduate or undergraduate?
Undergraduate editorial design.
Undergraduate edit type 4. And you have a design practice in Los Angeles.
Yes.
It spans cultural and commercial clients, focusing on identity systems, editorial design, obviously, and typography. And this is very true. You claim your work to be distinctive and diverse as her clients. And I know this about you. You definitely approach every project with being playful, having an open mind about it. I'll let you talk and show your work. But I also have to say that Jimena was one of Mujeres Hispanas y Typografía, typographer in residence during the pandemic, and where we had 4 different projects, 5 different women from around the world discuss their interest in typography, whether it was type design, research, or anything that really piqued their interest, and also showed the cultural influences, whether they had their background, whether they were from Peru or they were from Spain or from Mexico, Colombia. And I have to say, we just now finished the production of our catalog, our wonderful documentation, which is getting so many great reviews, reviewed by Stephen Heller in print, and available if anyone's interested on the HMCT website. And I have to say, it was a very interesting project. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn this over to you, Jimena. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. At the end, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll try to have a conversation afterwards. So please welcome Jimena Gamio. I'm going to stop my share.
Hello. My full name is Jimena Alessandra Gamio Valdivieso. And my name is really long because I'm Peruvian. So there's my first name, my middle name, my paternal last name, and my maternal last name. But like usually legally doesn't fit on a credit card. So I will go with Jimena Alessandra Gamio. But also for short, Jimena Gamio. And I'm gonna there's like sections to this talk. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about my background, and then I guess my practice, and then my work after. Okay, so originally I am from Lima, Peru. When you Google Peru, these are like the top images you get on Google. So there's Machu Picchu, the flag, a map, and ceviche, which is like the most popular dish. But this is actually where I'm from, which is the capital, Lima. So there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of life. And then I immigrated to Orange County, which was a big contrast. And there, I spent a lot of time in like shopping malls that had like movie theaters and like coffee shops. It was very like suburbia, kind of. And then I eventually moved to Los Angeles. And then my educational background. I first went to Cypress College, which the black and white photos are images of the school. It's a very brutalist building. And here I kind of got my associate's degree, but I also took every art class that the college had to offer. And I learned a lot about artists and art and conceptual art that I had never really heard about before. So like this school really opened my eyes, and I spent a lot of time in the library of this college. It's a community college in Orange County. And then after that, I graduated and I decided to go to sign painting school. And here I fell in love with letters and like the difference that a swing can do from your hand. For example, if you see the CS and the CR, the first CS is like when I first started, and then the CR are kind of when I already was doing it a lot. So the swing of my brushstroke is smoother. And I learned a lot about myself through this course. And then this course kind of led me to Art Center, which we are right now, kind of virtually. And at Art Center, I got to see many new things. I met a lot of great people, and I also learned a lot more about other artists I didn't know about. And I graduated in 2017. So that's like, I think this fall, it would be like 6 years. So it's like 5-ish years that I've been out of school. And I currently teach here just one class, editorial design 4, which is typography 4. And here are a few projects that I did when I was in school. This is actually the class I'm teaching. These were my dividers. This was a publication I made about Donald Trump before he won the election. And I wanted to juxtapose his followers. So I pulled quotes from audio bits. And then the top row, it's like his supporters that you wouldn't expect to be his supporters, like just like everyday people. And the bottom are his more extreme supporters. But it's left to the viewer to decide how to interpret these by reading the factual pull quotes. And then this was an app I made for an immigration rebrand for APS. And then there's pins, stickers. And I also, this was after Trump won. I wanted to make some posters that kind of promoted positive energy towards minorities because I felt like there was a lot of hate happening at the time. Still ABS. And this was type 5, which I did rebranded a female music festival. And then this was the installation. So now I'm going to talk about my work after school. These are just a few samples. I kind of put everything together in 3 slides. So first I'll let you see them, and I'll kind of talk a little bit through them. On the right, it's a poster for a DJ set at Ace Hotel New Orleans. The middle one is a chef series for Ace Hotel London. The top left, it's a publication made for all the employees at Ace Hotels, and that's 10 hotels. And everybody got this publication, and it had little updates of different hotels. And then the back was a poster they could put up on their wall if they wanted to keep. In the middle is a menu. Above it, there's an ad we took on a publication for the New York Art Book Fair. Bottom right, it's some pins I made for the city of LA for a campaign. Here, I designed the Paris Hilton logo on the bottom left. On the top left, it's a punch card for Ace Hotel Palm Springs. So you could like get a free coffee if you bought a bunch of stuff. Here's a record I did for Zach Farrow from Paramount, his like personal band called Half Noise, and that's the insert of the vinyl. Top right, it's a key card for Ace Hotel Brooklyn. And then on the bottom, it's like a flyer for their rooftop bar for, for Sister City called Last Flight. And then on the top, we see some postcard designs for this brand called Apapacho. They're from Mexico City. And I like that everything we printed was both in English and in Spanish. And in the middle, it's The Strokes, which are one of my favorite bands, had a benefit show for Maya. She was running for mayor for New York. She unfortunately lost, but the shirt did well because they actually raised a lot of money for her campaign. So the concert did work. And then on the top right, it's a shirt I designed for Sylvan Esso. And then on the bottom, it's some rolling papers I designed for the record release. And they have a song called Cloud Walker, which it's kind of fun because clouds make you smoke. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my practice, because I think not enough people talk about this area when I go to talks, and it's something I wish people talk a little bit more about. So I kind of separate my practice into 4 sections. Studios, personal clients, passion projects, and teaching. And then studios could be long-term or short-term, like they could be a full-time job, it could be a 6-month contract, it could be a month contract. Then through studios, I do a lot of like bigger brand work. And then personal clients are smaller projects that are project to project basis. So you specifically talk to the clients and like everything. And then there's also retainer clients, who are clients that you maybe do work every once in a while for. And then the third section is passion projects, which all of mine tend to have a line that always passes through research and language play. And then teaching, which I started doing 2020. This is my 3rd term teaching. And I think it's about giving back and like building community. So I think it's also important. And then like a few examples, like just to show you, like the Studio Public Library, I worked for them. So like I did a Nike Air Max campaign. So like that would be section 1. Or me and my friend Erica Smith rebranded the Feminist Center for Creative Work. So that's a personal project. And then like a passion project, I'm currently working on this publication called FAN, Fun Academic Notebook at work. And I'm really excited about it. And then teaching would be a class like Type 4 at Art Center. And these are like a list of the studios that I work for. They're in order of the length I worked for them. So like I worked for Ace Hotel for a very long time. And then it kind of goes down. And then these are some of the clients that I worked for through these studios or on my own. And then kind of like looking, and then these are ordered in alphabetical order. So kind of like by doing groupings, I realized I've done a lot of like hospitality work. I've done music, a lot of music work, and then culture. So those are kind of the groupings that I work in. And then I think to be happy, you have to have a balance in these 4 sections. So for example, if I only did all of my projects on section 1, I would probably be very unhappy. And then if I did all of my projects on section 3, I would probably be poor, but I would be happy. So I think there's like a balance that you have to achieve to kind of, get high paying projects, but also projects you care about more. Okay, so now let's talk about some projects. So this is a section 2. It's a personal client, and this is Fig Tree. So the owners of Fig Tree came to me in 2020. Fig Tree has been a restaurant since the 70s, but they changed ownership of the restaurant. So the people who owned the restaurant in the 70s owned the building. And then when the pandemic hit, the restaurant that was currently there had to close down. And the owner was very unsure what to do with this space. So he decided to give the space to his children. So they decided to like rebirth the restaurant that like their father had started in the 70s. And they were really inspired by like the generation of artists who live in Venice Beach in like the 60s, and like Ferris Gallery, and like a kind of different kind of Venice Beach that the currently associations we have with the West Side. And then the sister is actually a florist. Her name's Isa. You've probably heard of her. But I made her do this arrangements with figs, this beautiful things, so we could use these images for the printer collateral. And these are just iPhone photos because their budget wasn't that large and natural light, but I think they came out really good. And this is the color palette. And then here we start seeing all the elements working together. A gift card, a pen, a notepad. Essentially, matches are the business card to a restaurant. And here we can see them all in the color palette. And then the family is from Argentina. So they really wanted to play with like language and some Spanish in it. So this coaster says, "Tómate un vinito," which means drink a little wine. And then the match say, "Light me up," because like you're literally lighting it up. So it's kind of like funny. And yeah, these are the menus. And instead of just putting like breakfast, lunch, dinner, we wanted to play with sayings like from South America. So come un buen desayuno means eat a good breakfast. Come un buen almuerzo means eat a good lunch. Bocadillos para picar is snacks to snack. And then amor, salud y pesetas means love, cheers, and good luck. And then we made the menus monochromatic so they were easier to print. And then so the people working at the restaurant could easily differentiate the menu from the morning versus like the lunch menu, and like the drink menu versus like the snack menu. Because some people would just go there for snacks and like happy hour. So they would just get like the green and the blue, sorry, the green and the brown versus the other ones. And then here's the inside of one. And I also made a secondary lockup to kind of emphasize the heritage aspect of the restaurant, because it had been a restaurant since the 70s, right? It just changed ownership. And then they wanted some templates for social media. So I kind of just made, using the color palette, different kinds of pop-ups. They could have a wine tasting pop-up, or like a music night, or a book club. And then how language comes forward in the menus, it also comes forward here. You can see this list is of things you would find at the restaurant. And because it was in the peak of the pandemic, you can see hand sanitizer, but the restaurant is like facing the ocean. So you could see waves, seagulls, bikes. And then that's a postcard that I think they gave these out to like every restaurant around and businesses. And then this was an ad I think they took in a magazine in Venice. But yeah, that's project 1. Project 2, I did with my friend Erica Smith. And this one kind of falls into two sections, kind of like personal clients and kind of a passion project, right? For me at least. So this was the old logo of the Feminist Center, and they also did a rename. So it used to be called the Women's Center for Creative Work, and they changed it to Feminist Center for Creative Work. And this was a quote that we kind of kept along the entire project, and it ended up kind of inspiring the secondary graphic elements, because a root, we thought of a seed, and we made shapes with circles. So that's the new logo. And I'll kind of show you the guidelines a little bit, like the lockup, how it can be used in different compositions. The secondary lockup is the full name, because sometimes they need it to have that. And then we also have a third lockup where it's long. The letterhead, the envelope, the business cards. The color, we worked, it was very hard because they wanted a lot of really bright colors, and we wanted all of them to live and coexist within one place. So it was a lot of back and forth, kind of like a collaboration between me and Erica and the team. But I think we came up with a really good one. And here are all the logos with the colors. Here's what not to do with the logo. And then for the type system, which kind of was inspired because I used to work full time for Ace Hotel in an in-house department. And I could tell, sometimes I felt frustrated that I couldn't just pick a new typeface for a cool event that happened. I had to always stay with the same typeface of the brand. So we made a primary typography toolkit that these typefaces, the first 4, were going to be used throughout the website and everything that was printed that the center gave out. And then there was expressive typeface. And these, it's a toolkit that the in-house designer could change every year, and they could rotate it and update with cool typefaces. And these would be used for all the digital flyers and all the events they have. And then again, I was talking about that quote that was inspired by seeds. And so how many containers can you make with a circle? Here's a few of them. But the idea was that this is just the start of a toolkit, and then the in-house team could take this and kind of make their own world with it. And then we kind of just put them in examples, like an email, Instagram. And then they didn't have the greatest photography, but we kind of just emphasize crops and how to showcase the team working behind the scenes. And then kind of future photography crops or product photography. And then I just made some fast layouts to give them ideas on how to use the system. But obviously they kind of made their own world with it because they're the ones making all the content. And then we also did the art direction for the website and the design. So here's the splash page, and it was a carousel, so images would change. And then as you scroll up, the menu navigation would shrink. And then the pop-up, and then a navigation that has little hover actions. You keep scrolling. And then as you are kind of hinting toward the upcoming events, hovering, the box would round itself for a nice interaction. And then as you were scrolling down, you will see the news, and then the call for action for the newsletter. You would write your email and then sign up. And then this was the shop. So like just giving them ideas in how to like crop images, or what if they wanted to use a 2-up instead of a 1-up. And here's what the shop would look like. You scroll down, and this is the product page. And so if you like clicked add to cart, it would change to red. Then it would say in cart, and then you could kind of see your checkout thing on the right. And yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about a marketing campaign that I did while I was working for Ace Hotel. This would be in section 1. And this is the marketing campaign for Upstairs. So Upstairs is the rooftop bar at Ace Hotel downtown Los Angeles. And they were having an issue. A lot of young people weren't going anymore. They noticed a lot of people who were going to get drinks there were going there for like work meetings, but they weren't consuming enough alcohol. So they decided to program an exciting like DJ and comedy nights. And they wanted to make a campaign that they would like weed paste and make postcards and like hand off through all the businesses to bring younger people to come. So that was like one aspect of this project. The other aspect was creating a system that every designer could do and it would feel the same. So me and my coworker Juan Carlo Muro came up with this. Number 1, you can only use Atlas Grotesque family. If you want other typefaces, draw them. This was a rule because the studio couldn't afford to buy another family of typefaces. So we could only pick one. Number 2, you must draw something with a marker and scan it. So no matter what, you always draw something. Number 3 was to include arrows pointing upstairs, like pointing up, to kind of tell people that the bar was up. And then 4, if your project manager provided you with images, you had to manipulate the images with the copier. So this kind of gave some limitations that gave exciting, almost like you were never lost. Like if you got this assignment, you'd be like, oh, I know what typeface I have to use, and I'm gonna draw something and I'm gonna scan it. So you kind of had fun with it, right? And for like an in-house job, I think that's really cool. So this was kind of the system. You could only use Atlas. And then the copywriters came up with these categories. There's 4 based on all the events they had planned. And then here are some of the sketches. Here are the arrows. Sometimes it would get really, really fun, like if you were just having a really good day. Or sometimes it was like a little repetitive, like you would like write the same date like 30 times. Sometimes you would get up and make your coworkers draw them. So it felt like a collaboration between everyone, really. Here, like we scanned this and like we moved this as the scanner was going, and then we like printed it and cut it out. But yeah, and then just like drawing and kind of having fun. And it kind of led to, these are just some of the posters, not all of them, but it kind of has this energy that all of them, even though they're so different, they all feel like they came from the same place, which I love. And then so section 3, this is a passion project. I went to a concert and I saw St. Vincent on the left, and it was a double headlining show, which means that Erykah Badu on the right and St. Vincent had the same amount to play. So I think they both played for like 50 minutes each. But these artists are very different from each other. The music is completely different, and so is their fan base. So then I realized I was sitting around Erykah Badu fans. Like I was probably the only St. Vincent fan in that spot in the audience at the Hollywood Bowl. And I started hearing like 50 to like 70-year-old audience members who were Erykah Badu fans, kind of really just like talking really bad about St. Vincent as she was playing. And I decided to pull out my iPhone and transcribe everything they were saying, because like it really made me laugh. They were just like talking bad about something that I loved. And then after the concert, I decided to make it into a publication called Ear, because I just like heard them say it. So these are actually like quotes that I transcribed. And so like somebody said like, who is opening up for Erykah? St. Vincent, who the fuck is that? And like all the quotes made me laugh. The book is 100 pages, so it means there's 100 words. And if you don't, like at the end, it tells you the story, but if you don't really know that, it's just kind of language. And like also the spreads on their own kind of become very graphic and almost like signs, like opening up. So I think it's really funny. Somebody said, is it like religious music? Because her name is St. Vincent. And then somebody said, why that white girl cray, which was really fun. Oh yes, and then that's the last project I'm gonna talk about. But I always aim to kind of get projects in this middle section, like something that's like passion and something that's a little personal. And that's my goals, I guess, for the future. And this is my garage that me and my friend turned into a studio. And on the right, you can see I'm like working on a typeface. And on the left is at night. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimena. I have lots of questions to ask you. And if anyone has a question, you can put it in the Q&A. I really like the fact that you talk about the balance. And you're so new out of school and so new to teaching that you've really thought about this. And I think a lot of students don't think, what should my balance be? How do I do this? Because most people think, and I think you're right, it's the mistake in the field of, well, any field, but especially of graphic design. It's, you know, what's the balance? How everyone's always afraid to say, how do I become successful? You know, and I think you are absolutely right about, you still need to make money, but the only way you're going to survive is if you want to do things that have passion for you, right? I mean, it's obvious.
And I think you also learn to everything. Like I learned so much from projects that are more corporate on section 1 that I have brought into my number 2, and they have helped me to like get clients that I like more, or like towards my goals. So I feel like in everything there's been a learning curve, and I like that too. So I wouldn't like necessarily be like, oh, like only do projects you're passionate about, because then you become very close-minded, versus when you work for example, like something for like Apple or a project for Apple Music, there's way more heads that are approving things. So to do anything slightly creative, it's more difficult. But if you achieve it, it's almost like, yes, like I got through it. Like, you know, like.
You also see the influence, though. What happens if you maintain your passion and personal clients, you can start to see the influence of that in your more corporate studio clients, so to speak. You know, you start to see it being infused into something, and you start presenting, and, you know, things that I have to say, and I'm going to not embarrass you, but I remember, I think when I did your first term portfolio review, scholarship review, did you present everything that was hand painted?
I think I put like a board with a word, like my table, which is a board.
You presented the most incredible board whatever of, for Art Center, that was so unusual to see, such an analog presentation of work. And I still see the influence in your work of your analog typographic training. It's very obvious, whether you're creating typefaces, but in your design aesthetic, especially for the 8th Hotel, those series that you did for them, I thought it's this lack of fear to
Also,
include.
I forgot to share this, but kind of like talking about Ace, like every poster had to have a social media aspect to it, like a story. So like every poster had a motion piece as well that went with it. And it was just kind of fun to make too.
Well, and again, I think there's certain influence perhaps from, maybe it's your upbringing. I see a lot of street vernacular in your work. Am I right about it? That I see a lot of typographic vernacular that maybe was influenced by signage, not necessarily the most formal signage, but I see it.
Yeah, I think it's natural to be very inspired by your surroundings, and like moving to Los Angeles, like we have such rich vernacular typography. Like if you go to Westlake, like go down one street and like literally stare at all designs. Like there's this the 98-cent shop. It's like this like square numeral, and it almost looks like a Barry McGee piece. Like it looks like Mary McGee just grabbed it and put it in a gallery. So I definitely feel like I am inspired by Los Angeles and a lot of the work I do. Because how can you not be inspired by where your surroundings and where you live? I think it's natural.
How much of your cultural background do you think influences your work in terms of form or shape, or the other part of you, your family and your culture?
I mean, I think everything's connected. So I think like things I saw when I was little, like the fact that my favorite color is yellow, it's influence on the fact that like there's a lot of yellow buildings in Peru. Or like it makes me think of warm things, or like things that I learned in community college about specific text artists were ideas that I like brought in when I'm even doing personal client work sometimes, and like things kind of overlap, so I think everything's kind of connected, and like the more you make, it's almost like the better, in a way.
So how do you see as you go forward? Are you interested in increasing the size of your studio? Eventually, how do you see your path? Do you have a path? A plan?
Yeah, I would love to get like bigger clients on my own. Like that would be great. I think like I already have my own practice, but I think I would love to, I would be open to, opening up to like me and someone else. I don't know if things match up. But I definitely, I feel with time, I mean, I've only been out of school like 5 years, but I feel like almost every 6 months I get closer and closer to my goals in a weird way, where I'm just like thinking like, oh, what do I want to do? Like, why did I not do last year? How can I improve this? Whether it's like a research project or like, taking some time off, like work, like just to have some time for the passion projects. So I guess just time, like with time, I think everything will come. But
Well, you have a lot of patience, which I think a lot of people don't have. They always want to say, what do I do? What do I do? Where do I go next? How come I'm not achieving? And I think what I really admire is you really maintained a sense of self identity in your work. You didn't run to, I need to work for Google, I need to work for Microsoft, I need to be an
Yes.
in-house person. And I'm sure it might offer a lot more
And
security.
like I have done projects for all of those people, like through
Right.
studios. So I have done that, but like I think working for Ace Hotel at the beginning for 2 years put a lot of things in perspective, because like I didn't know what working in an in-house studio was going to be like, and then like being in the same room with people. We had a really great team. That was like my favorite thing about working there. But being in the same group and like kind of like having all this really kooky, crazy ideas, because like it was such varied work. Like one day we had to design room numbers for a brand new hotel, and like, oh, how do we design the do not disturb sign in a very cool way? Versus the other, like the following week, we had to make like a pop-up music festival branding, and we had to think about signage and banners and like how were people gonna wear wristbands that were waterproof and like all of these things. So I think like because every project was so different, sometimes it was like a restaurant branding. I think it almost set me up to not be scared, because every day was almost like different. So it's like, oh, what do I have to do today? Like, oh, okay. And then there was like the longer term projects that like were longer term goals, but every day I kind of had to do something. Like sometimes it was a menu, sometimes it was a postcard. It was like a little bit of everything. And I think like even working for Levi's, like I worked for Levi's for like I think 5 months. And like I was like replacing their senior designer who was on maternity leave, and I had to like help them with an image system that was gonna be all through like Germany and like Asia and like all of the printed ads for like all of the stores. And like that was kind of wild to me because it was like an image collage, but it had like so many approvals and like so it had such a huge reach. Like I think even my mom saw one of the collages I worked on in like Lima, like at the Levi's store, you know. So like that's kind of wild. But then other things, like a t-shirt for like the Strokes, like one of my favorite bands, like that was very exciting for me because I was like, yes, like I'm getting closer to my goal of designing for people I love.
Yeah, that's a long and lofty goal to do that. But I think what you're doing is very interesting. By not being in one specific place, you're able to kind of have a sampling of design, different modes of design, whether it's motion, whether it's ID systems, whether it's illustration, whether it's hand done. I mean, you're still at the point of sampling everything and building kind of like your candy store of what you can do and what you can design. Are you finding that your ability to work in two languages helpful? I
Um,
mean, has that been an asset to any of these corporate clients, you might say, in general?
I think lately it has been because like not the corporate clients, but the personal clients, like the smaller, like either the restaurant, like the mom and pop
Mhm.
shop. A lot of the clients have kind of came to me because they were like, hey, like recently just did a rebrand for this place in Mexico City, and they came to me because they're like, oh, we were actually talking to a lot of studios in LA and some in New York, but they're like, but you understand certain things because you speak Spanish and like like kind of a little bit both of the demographics, right? So like
Mhm.
because they felt they could I could understand them better, like I got the job versus like studios that have been working for 15 years who didn't get the job.
Mhm.
um and it was just because of that. And like for example, we had our meetings in like in Spanish and in English sometimes because like the woman spoke Spanish, so it was very interesting for me to also partake like percent in Spanish as well too. um
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I know that this is an issue with not just in Latin America, but in other areas of the world where, there are so many studios or designers, they want to work in their language. And I was just wondering if, and it sounds as if there are some clients who agree that they need to work with the demographics of their language, you
Yeah,
know?
I think it's definitely I think it's a plus. Like I think it only improves the work if you also have a similar perspective as them. Not to say that like somebody who doesn't speak Spanish could not have done
Right,
a good branding for them,
right.
but I think it does help their relationship with the client and like the way the conversations go, etc.
Yeah, there are certain, it's like any culture, there are certain nuances that you are only familiar with if you're part of the culture. And it's okay. It's okay that that's not demanding. I find it very interesting that they're not demanding one perspective or a thought of design. You know, they're not saying, okay, we want everything to be done as if it was international Swiss style. And I think perhaps that's where, you know, Art Center is expanding by having you teach. Thank you. By having you teach at Art Center, you're bringing a whole different perspective to design at Art Center that perhaps maybe they wouldn't do 10 years ago. You know, it's okay to show influence of culture in your design where, you know, right, 20 years ago, you would never do that. You'd have to follow a certain regimentation and prescription of what good design looks like. So, so I just think it's great that you're teaching. You know, I
Oh,
think
thank
you're
you.
bringing I think you're bringing a very positive attitude to the students, and I hope that they agree that it's okay to say my background, my experiences, my culture is important to how I express my design, along with the formal teaching that you've learned, because you've learned formal, you know, design pedagogy at school, but you've been allowed to express your background and your culture and your love of yellow. Which, you know, you can see I happen to like yellow too, obviously. It's
Very
the
nice
HMC,
jacket.
it's the
Um,
HMCT color. But so I have a question from Jamal. Oh, this is interesting. What advice do you have for designers of color finding their way or niche in the design world? That's a very interesting question.
um, I think I would advise to like be a sponge, like go above and beyond. Like when I went to school, I remember I can't remember which teacher I asked, but I was like, who's your favorite like non-white female designer? And like the teacher was like they like didn't really answer. And like a few younger teachers did have like a reply for me. I was just trying to find more designers that like I liked, or like I wanted to see different kinds of perspectives. Like obviously, like you know, like the Bauhaus and everything that we learn in our history. But I wanted to learn more about like current or like yeah, I guess like current like people who were working. And I think it was through me like being a lurker or like going to talks and like looking people up, and like if I saw a designer I really liked, I would follow them on Instagram. And then I would see like they're like, oh, they're having another talk at the school, and then I would go and I would ask my friends, hey, come with me. And then we would all go, and then like kind of make community with what you're trying to do. Because I think that that's always so helpful, like if you got like if you're doing with your friends. And then in the aspect of finding your own niche, like I like embrace weirdness. So like don't be afraid to be weird. Like I think being weird is cool. So like you know, like things could like obviously when you're in school, like especially at Art Center, like the first 4 terms are more you're learning all the rules and like everything, and like 5th term up it's like you're trying to get your own voice, right? Like up to like kind of start making the projects that are going to be like the projects that people hire you for, and like what you're going to start designing out in the world. So I guess my advice is to like once you know the rules, like you can break them, but you can also look what other designers are doing, and like inspiration, and like,
I think that's important. I think it's easier today, Jamal, to find the designers who are designers of color, designers of certain cultures that maybe we couldn't find before because they weren't talked about in textbooks, right? But now, now it's so easy, right? Through digital media to say, this is the work of an interesting designer who might not have been written about in a book, right? But you can find someone who you might find inspiration from through social media and I always say this, do not be afraid to contact these people and say,
and
hey, I like your work. I mean, I think students are afraid to approach designers. There was once David Carson, who's a well-known designer, Ray Gunn and Surfer Magazine. He would say, people don't contact me, because I think they felt, a little intimidated by it. And I think that's another advice. Great designers are just people. So you never know.
Yeah, and like I think also like yeah, I think it's much easier now. Like I think in like 2020, like the Black Lives Matters movement really put things in perspective. Like I saw people like rechecking themselves, like institutions being like, oh, like what are we doing? So I feel like there was like almost like if somebody grabbed a sheet and went like this, like refresh. So I definitely do think that now publications are being more inclusive, et cetera, et cetera. And now I see some books that are more targeted at things that like before I had to like lurk weird websites to find, but I think the information is always there if you're really looking. And I think like a really big advice that I would give is like, don't just like go beyond what your teacher says. So like if your teacher says something, you're like, okay, great, awesome. But like go to the library, like look at books, look at similar books. Sometimes I would like go to the library and then just go to a section and like open all of the books like in this small section. And I would like, oh, that's a cool grid. But I would also like look at the content, and like me and my friends would constantly do this, I think, because we were just like very curious.
I think you just hit a note, which we can end on is go to the library. Don't just look online, because you can't sit in this spot and, like you said, pull all the books out, see what's next to the other book. And I think that's for anyone who's here, who's a student, you have to be physically present and look physically in order to discover something. You're not going to have this moment of accidental discovery when you're looking specifically online for one thing. I remember that. That's great. Books are still good.
And like reading, like I think I get my best ideas from reading.
Very true. Well, I want to thank you, Jimena, for joining us and everyone else. Good luck with teaching. And I hope this, people who are here today are inspired by your work. I think your work is so fresh, and it's so interesting to see how much influence you're going to have on the students here at Art Center. And it does break what people normally perceive as the Art Center look. You understand the rules, but you've decided, I'm going to have the Jimena Gamio look, not the Art Center look. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for coming. And hopefully we will see you next week. We have Si Young is going to be our speaker, and again, another perspective, another young teacher who comes to Art Center with a very different background, again, from you and from Cheryl. And so thank you again. And I'll look for you. What day do you teach? I want to look for you.
Wednesdays, 2 to 7.
Okay, I will look for you, and I'll look for your work. And everyone, again, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.